Now, I talked about my impressions at about 18 hours or so last week, and it was a long rambly. Everything I do is rambly. It was a long thing to get to the point, I guess. And after that, like, I was in love with this game at that point. Loved it to death. Amazing, amazing, amazing. But going from that point to at hour 24 when I finished the game, and then now I'm at about 29 hours and I've done the vast majority of the underground optional cave area, I can't help but feel disappointed and there's a lot of strange choices done in The Witness. And I wrote a lot of these down because my nose is really itchy, so I had to write them down. Let's talk about the story first. The story that is not there, not interesting, even when it is there, and is borderline in the way of everything else that is going on. It actively, and I've heard people talk about the story in this game and have like, whoa, that crazy moment when something happened. And I'm like, did I miss an entire story here? Or is this just, oh, like that's how I felt. That's how I felt about the story. When there's certain moments that happen, I'm like, oh, okay, that's what that is. It was an oh, and everyone's having this big reaction to it. What's happening? So, the story, every time it was like, oh, this is contrived and this is whatever, and all these audio logs are like, oh, the meaning of life is whatever, and you gotta look into the background to see the foreground, and I don't care. Just shut up and give me puzzles. That's why I'm here. The game was sold to me as, do you like puzzles? Here's a bunch of puzzles. And I feel lied to in a certain respect. We're going to move on to the next area. I wrote this long, like, crazy manifesto over here. Okay, so every single area in The Witness, there are 11, I believe. Yeah, that's about right. One of them is a combination of all the kind of secrets and mechanics, and the other ones all have their own little thing. And you complete an area and it opens a little beam of light and it shoots a beam of light. Perfect. Solve all the puzzles, shoot the beam of light, shoot all 11, stuff happens. You actually don't have to do all 11. I think you have to do 7? I'm not sure. So I've done all of them. I've discovered all their secrets, and it's really frustrating because some of these areas in the game are amazing and I love them, like the treetops, the place with the twin lines that I will get to soon in this video, are so much fun to play, and I love the puzzles and the design of those areas. And then you get to these other places where it's so stupid and frustrating and like, and not because it's difficult to understand what's happening. Like there's a different, like, okay, you go to the desert, right? And the deal with the desert, I'm going to try and make this as spoiler-free as possible, the whole review. But the deal with the desert is that it deals with perspective and like reflections and light and stuff like that. So you get there and you might not understand what's happening. And then as you're walking around, you'll look at a panel and you'll realize what's happening. And so you've solved the secret, right? You figured it out. Like, oh, this is a cool moment. And then you proceed to use that secret over and over and over and over again to figure out the next 20 puzzles. And the deal with all of that, and the problem I have with that, is once you find that secret, you are left using that same secret, which is essentially to move yourself as the player into a certain position. And in that position, you can see the solution. Once you see the solution, you simply have to remember it or write it down or whatever, and then you solve the puzzle. And that, to me, is not a puzzle, or not a puzzle I want to solve, rather. It's certainly not a logic puzzle. It's more of a frustrating, I spent the next, I don't know, hour in the stupid desert trying to figure out all the places I need to stand to solve these puzzles, and it wasn't fun. It wasn't a fun thing to do. You get to other areas where you have to stand again, you have to stand in a certain place to see the solution. That's not a puzzle. That's an optical illusion almost. Like, it doesn't even make sense as to, like, some of these areas are so stupid. And even the ones that are contrived like that I do like the shadow place, the foresty tree place, that place is cool and interesting. But that's cool and interesting one place, and you repeat the same idea of perspective and light over and over in these puzzles that aren't interesting, in these puzzles that only have one solution. For example, if this puzzle has a shadow and whatever, blah, 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 it reveals this solution, right? But if this puzzle has symbols on it, which a lot of these puzzles do, you can solve that a number of different ways. You know, if you have to like separate two symbols, you can do it this way, you can do it that way. There's different ways to solve it. But with these stupid perspective puzzles, all it revolves around is finding where you need to stand in order for the game to tell you, yeah, this is the answer. It's a bit like in math class, I remember our book, the back of the book had the answers to every odd numbered question. And the witness functions the same, in a similar way for some of these puzzles, in that if I looked up an answer to a question in this book, I would see, okay, question 3, and it would say, go to page 137, and then I'd flip to 137, and I'd look at the page, and I wouldn't see anything. And then if I tilted the book, I'd see the answer. Okay, it's 45. That's all it's doing. All the witness is doing with the third of the puzzles in the game is hiding them over here. And you just have to figure out where they're hidden and write them down. And in that way, I don't want to do that. That is stupid, and it's frustrating when that is the focus of a third of the puzzles in the game, when there is so much left to explore with the logic puzzles, with these Tetris pieces, with the pieces you have to separate by color, like 4 or 5 colors on some of these, the pieces, the stars, that you have to combine with 2 in a group, but only 2, no more, no less. Those puzzles are fantastic and amazing and kept me coming back, and I loved solving them. And then you get to these other places that are frustrating as hell, and I haven't even talked about the sound area. The sound area, where I'll solve that one for you. This bird will make a noise, and it's 3 different pitches, and you have to figure out how to do it. And then it starts breaking glass in there too, and like all these weird other noises. I'm just trying to solve your dumb puzzles that every single other area in the game besides that sound one has a ramp up that makes sense. You understand, oh, I can't do that, I can do this. It teaches you the rules in a smart way. Except for the sound place, that's all of a sudden like, here's a bunch of lines and noises are going on. And you're like, okay, but I don't know which noise goes to which. Oh, that's a higher noise, so I get higher on the thing? I don't fucking know, and I don't care. This puzzle, like the ones on the screen right now, is what I want. I want more of these puzzles. And the problem that I have, again, going back to it, is that the game focuses on these stupid shadow, light, optical illusion, sound bullshit puzzles, when instead I would have rathered, and I feel like it would be more interesting if it had taken these puzzles further and done hexagons and done weird triangles. Like, there are some, but it's not enough. It feels so underutilized. I don't even think I solved this correctly. I don't know what I'm doing in this beginning of the game. It's so disappointing. Like, there are some symbols. There's this triangle symbol that is only optional, and it is extremely interesting, and it's barely used at all. And I don't understand why. I don't get why until you start looking at the game from the lens of the story. The convoluted, oh, the world's crazy and everything exists and you gotta notice surroundings. Until you start looking at it from that lens and you realize they, I guess, added in some of these places. I feel like, and they wanted to add diversity and different types. It didn't want to be just logic puzzles, despite the fact that that's all I ever wanted. And these puzzles, you hear my stomach grumbling at these puzzles. It's angry as well. I'm not angry at the game. It just doesn't feel right. Why would you focus your attention? Like, there's not a single person, I cannot imagine this person, who would say, oh, the desert, that's my favorite area in The Witness. I would look at that person like they're a psychopath. They could have straight up taken out a dead bird out of their pocket and bit off its head, and I would have been like, that's less weird than liking the desert the most out of all the areas. Because that's crazy. You are crazy if you think that. It doesn't make any sense to me. You got the treetops, you got the quarry, I'll give you. You got the twin snake place, you got the Tetris piece place. Those are amazing. Those are all logic puzzles. Those are all brain teasers, as opposed to this stupid finagling yourself in the world to figure it out. That's not a, I guess that's a puzzle, but it's not interesting. It doesn't have any ramifications. And I was thinking about this earlier, and what I would have rather seen is these shadow and light puzzles. I would have rather seen them interact with the logic puzzles, because that would have been interesting. If you could have solved the puzzle with a Tetris piece a certain way, but then a shadow is preventing you from doing it that way, that could have been interesting. But wrinkles like that don't happen. The perspective stuff, they don't interact with each other, really. All the logic stuff, it's a giant puzzle piece massacre. They're all over the place against each other, and that's awesome. Going back to other ideas I would have liked to have seen that I feel like we could have had some interesting uses here. What about puzzles where you're given the symbols and you have to put them on the board to solve it? There's a line already drawn and you have to place the symbols in the correct spot. That sounds really interesting. How about other, I have a bunch, I'll just scroll down to my dumb ideas I have. Because it's ridiculous though. And oh, going back too, there's this whole thing about don't look it up, don't look it up. Well, yeah, don't look it up. Don't look it up that you have to stand in some dumb spot and you're like, oh, okay. And that, you know, it's the only aha moment. Don't do that. But if I'm on puzzle 20 of 25 and your annoying design decision of I have to solve all 24 to get to the 25th one is preventing me from continuing, and I know the secret and I just don't, maybe I'm impatient. I thought I was patient, but maybe I'm impatient. I don't want to be stuck on the same puzzle for 20 minutes. I want to solve more of these types of puzzles. And you're actively preventing me from solving them because of your decision to make it where you have to solve everything in a row. Not like 3 out of 4 or whatever. All of them. For the most part, that's not so much of a problem. Well, I find it right quick here. Right here. So, and the game does its whole shtick as it's all secrets you have to discover. Oh, what does this mean? Oh, that means something. Da 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 da. But what if the witness did tell you some of the rules? What if it took the time and explicitly said, hey, this is what this means? I feel it could have then taken the rules further. It could have made them even more complicated, not too crazy, but done interesting things with them. By giving the rules, you allow the players to know how to play the game. Now, imagine you give 2 groups of kids who have never played basketball. You say you're on one team, you're on the other team. Here's a hoop, here's a ball. That game of basketball they're going to play is going to be really weird. And it might be fun to watch, but wouldn't you rather tell the kids the rules to basketball and then watch them play, and then they can come up with all these weird things? Like, you're not going to understand what a 3-point shot is unless you understand all the freaking rules. So the idea that And that's my point exactly, is that the witness never gets to the 3-point shot. It never gets to all these different rules. It only gets to surface level, separate these things apart, and that's the secret. Right? Separate these things apart, that's it. Oh, there's more colors now. That's it. But there's no third thing. There's no third layer that I feel like it could have. I wrote down some ideas. Now, I already talked about the honeycombs. You can have a honeycomb pattern. There's like one, there might be a couple. I'm not sure, but there's not a lot. I would like to see honeycomb pieces. How about honeycomb or different grid shapes with the stars, with the Tetris pieces that aren't square. There's this triangle thing that eliminates mistakes. So you have to intentionally make a mistake. I guess, is that supposed, it doesn't, you'll figure it out like right away. You intentionally have to make a mistake to solve the puzzle, which is very interesting, but it never goes anywhere with it. Like it does a couple few interesting things with it, and then it just goes away. It just goes away. Oh, we invented this cool mechanic to use for 5 puzzles. Bye. And that's what's so disappointing about it. And okay, here's my more puzzle. Triangles. I want more triangles. Placing symbols on top of the thing. Once again, the other triangles, the symbol triangles, there's single triangles, double triangles, triple triangles. I'm not going to tell you what they mean. Those are very interesting, and they are entirely optional, and it's ridiculous to imagine a world in which the desert or that stupid sound place are given their own areas that people will play and enjoy, and then this optional mechanic that was really interesting that combined with Tetris pieces and other shit could have been amazing is just relegated to optional, entirely optional stuff that a lot of people will not see. A lot of those puzzles, no one will see. You might see a couple. You might not know what's going on because the game never tells you anything about the rules. Now, there was a Dark Souls comparison, right? Of like, Dark Souls doesn't tell you anything, it just lets you loose. And that's true. Dark Souls does, or the Souls games, rather, they let you loose. You can go and do whatever the hell you want, right? But what Dark Souls doesn't do is put an enemy in front of a door that you can't get past, that you have to go past, and it doesn't tell you what to do. So if the Dark Souls was designed like The Witness, you have an enemy in front of a door that you can't get past, he's just constantly attacking, and the only way to get past him would be to do the riposte thing against the enemy. But in this alternate reality, the game would have never told you that's a thing. You have to somehow figure out that that's a thing. Why? Why don't you tell me the rules so that I can play by the rules? And that's something that Dark Souls actually does. When you screw up in Dark Souls, you know. You pull a switch and a giant axe came out and sliced you in half. You'd understand what happened. But with The Witness, you can mess things up and you're not going to know. Now, some of these puzzles, some of these logic puzzles, yes, it does tell you, it does flashes them red because you messed up. But other than that, you're given no indication. And while the idea of having a puzzle game that doesn't tell you anything is interesting and is executed well, I don't think having all these aha moments is worth it in the end. It's not worth it when I'm actively mad at your game for just being a dickhead and not telling me what it's trying to tell me. It is, and I keep citing like all these references and things I had written. It's like, once again, back to sports. If you gave a kid a bunch of sports equipment for everything, it's got a basketball, it's got a baseball bat, it's got a badminton racket, it's got all tons of shit in there. And you're like, okay, play baseball. And the kid's like, I don't know how to play baseball. And you're just like, play baseball. Just play it, kid. Just figure it out. Just play baseball. And so the kid picks up the basketball. He doesn't know any sports because he's a crazy kid. Picks up the basketball. And you look at him and you're like, nah. And after 6 hours, this kid finally figures out, okay, baseball bat, and I got the ball. Why don't you just tell the kid how to play the freaking game? I don't understand why your insistence on being smug. Some of these aha moments are cool and great, but it is, once again, because that's the goal of the game and its whole little story vague weirdness, that has shaped the world so much that it strips away any help, any hints, and that wouldn't be a problem once again if you didn't have to complete everything. The game is such a chain reaction. It is solve puzzle A to get to B, to get to C, to get to D in order. You got to do all of them. Occasionally there are optional areas that are, again, what the word optional means, optional. But you're still going to run up to a puzzle you can't solve. And instead of the game having the good graces to let you do puzzle C and skip B, it forces you to do all of them. And even stranger is this optional area I keep mentioning after you do every area in the game doesn't do that. It just gives you a bunch of puzzles. It does it in some places, but it just gives you a ton of puzzles, and that's what I wanted. I wanted the puzzles. I was sold on the idea of puzzles, and what I got from The Witness was sometimes puzzles and sometimes a weird game of I Spy that is not a fucking puzzle. There are things, once again, in this entirely optional area that requires you to complete the vast majority of the game to get to. There's a timer. There's a timer mechanic. So you have to solve a bunch of puzzles, and these puzzles are more or less randomly generated in a certain amount of time. And while that place is annoying, it was interesting, and it added something new to the game. It's probably a little bit too long, but the idea of doing a puzzle, even a simple one, even a simple maze puzzle, under a time limit is interesting. And I feel like it never played with those ideas. It just gave you a bunch of shit. It sometimes combined to the shit. It never went further. Like these, what if you had a board? Like these boards are, I call it the twin snakes because they're two snakes, but they're basically, you do them at the same time, right? But what if there was a board that you had to draw 2 lines to complete? You had to use 2 lines, and there was only one exit, or there was 2 exits, and you had to do that. What about other interesting ideas? It doesn't go far enough. It doesn't, and I'm probably the only person to say this about The Witness, there aren't enough puzzles. I wanted more puzzles. I wanted more logic puzzles, and instead, a third of the game is filled with garbage that is so disappointing and frustrating to me that it is all I can think about. It is the nagging thing that is constantly there of like, I'm here too, stupid Sound Jungle. And I'm like, go fuck yourself, Sound Jungle. I don't want you. I don't want you to be here. Get out of my game. So, while I know it is stupid to complain about something that's not what I wanted from it, what I thought I was getting with The Witness was not quite what I got. And I am not as enamored with the secrets that it holds. Finding its secrets are cool, but they are required. A secret is not a secret when everyone knows it. Okay? There's an enemy in Dark Souls 1 that I have seen 3 times maybe in 200 something hours. That's a fucking secret. Okay? A secret isn't something everyone playing the game is probably going to figure out. That's not a secret. That's a rule you could have just told me, because you know what? Some of these secrets, once you find them out, it would have been just as shocking as if I had just looked it up. Or I'd been like, oh, that's the answer? Holy shit, that's cool. That was the same reaction I had after an hour trying to figure something out. Sometimes you figure out something quickly. Sometimes the secret isn't that secretive, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I just look like this and I solved the answer. Okay. Oh, big aha moment there. That was worth it. That was worth it. But it's so frustrating, again, with this game. It's the same way I felt about Metal Gear Solid 5, which is a strange example, that Metal Gear Solid 5 is so close to what I wanted in a Metal Gear game, but it just doesn't do that shit. And even beyond that, it has a lot of problems. And The Witness feels like that too, even though, sure, I would have liked to have seen more logic puzzles. The game doesn't have as many logic puzzles, like tough shit, but some of the puzzles it has, truly terrible. And I do not understand how you can, maybe you can like them, but you cannot equate them. You cannot equate 3 of the areas in the game to this area. There is no way this area beats 50% of the game in terms of creativity and fun I had playing the game. One final thing. because of its secretiveness and because of the way it teaches you, and it does teach you, and that is really cool, and I don't want to undersell that. That is an amazing achievement, how it teaches you all these things. But because of how it teaches you and because of how things ramp up, a lot of the areas go from 0 to 60 rather quickly. You'll be doing 3 puzzles like, oh, these are tutorial puzzles, and then the next puzzle is like, what the fuck happened? This is Crazy Town. There's not a lot of middle ground. There's a little bit of easy tutorial stuff, and then there's hard and medium level puzzles. There's not a ramping difficulty in some of these places. And I don't know. I don't want to complain about it anymore. At this point, I've rambled on about The Witness for far too long. It's really good, and I really enjoy it. And final point. It comes down to this. I love The Witness, but if I ever play The Witness again, I will not be playing, and I will not be solving some of these puzzles, because I do not care about them, and I'm tired of their shenanigans. Right? That's what it comes down to, and that's a weird thing to say. It's a weird thing to say, oh, a third of your game, if I ever play it again, I don't want to look at. I don't even want to think about it, because it's such an annoyance to me. And a disappointment as well. And also, someone pushed their dog down the stairs and they're a mean person. They're a very mean person. We've got sound from above. But with that, that's gonna be the end of the show. Quick show, no one's here. I get to just yell at a camera about The Witness for half an hour, which is fun and is enjoyable to me. That it's probably more enjoyable than you think. It's kind of cathartic to talk about just The Witness. Great game overall. Also, this 100-hour bullshit. Where did anyone get that from? 100 hours? Sure, I looked up the solution to like 30 puzzles, but most of those were in the stupid sound place and that dumb shit desert that I was just exhausted and I wanted to leave. I don't know where this 100 hours come from. Regardless, this has been the show every Friday, right here, twitch.tv/BenReacts. That's right, Reacts. Take that, fine bro. 3 p.m. Pacific time, talking about whatever the hell I want to talk about. Probably boring, probably rambly, definitely rambly. Thanks for watching. My refrigerator just started. It's really loud. You probably can't hear it though. This week I have an ending slide. I made one.